The anime started with loner boy Haruka, who hides near some goblins. The idiot blows his cover by stepping on the smallest twig, ever so the goblins chase after him. Haruka smiled with utter confidence as he jumps into the air and all the goblins fall into his trap. Haruka is very pleased with himself as he's doing a great job surviving alone in another world. A look back shows how Haruka got himself in this situation. Haruka has always been a loner, and he explains to us that it's because he just never wanted anything to do with his classmates. He didn't like any of them, and they would just get in the way of what he finds most important, and that's reading. As Haruka looked around his classroom, the divide among the students was very clear. There were the popular girls, the delinquents, the jocks, the class rep, the nerds, and the others category. Haruka didn't belong to any of these groups, but he wouldn't have it any other way. This was when a magic circle appeared out of nowhere. Haruka was excited because it was just like the ones he had read in manga, but he remembered that going to another world is a pain in the butts. The heroes in the manga always ended up having to be around a bunch of people, but that sounded like torture to Haruka. He tried his best to get out of the classroom, but it didn't go so well. All the other students panicked as the magic circle expanded, but Haruka cleverly escaped through an air vent. Unfortunately for him, the magic circle chased him up there, and he found himself in the generic white void place. How look exactly what to expect from reading so much manga. He wondered where the typical king was and when his daughter, who was beyond the reach of any nerd, would show up. Some old guy frantically signaled to him, so Haruka realized that this guy was some sort of god. It turns out that the teleporting was first come first served, so Haruka's classmates were teleported already and Haruka was left behind. Haruka was allowed to pick his status and skills just before being sent to his new world. A giant board appeared with all the options, but Haruka was disappointed about something. This was the first time the old god summoned so many people, so all of the cheat skills were already taken, and only the worthless ones were left. Haruka took a look at his options, but they were all terrible. One skill was just being able to hold a stick. Some other ones were just good overall general health and walking. Haruka made himself feel even worse by seeing some of the overpowered skills that he missed out on, like 4-element magic. Back to the bad stuff, Haruka found titles like Shut In and Neat. Haruka demanded for the old god to give him more options because he wouldn't even be able to pass the first village with the ones he had to choose from. The old god became fed up, so he decided to just give Haruka all the remaining skills at once. Haruka gained all the leftover worthless skills, and he was teleported. In the new world, Haruka is supplied with a bag that can hold unlimited items. Haruka gears up and checks his stats. His stats screen tells him to roll some dice, and he remembers reading about the skill. It allows him to allocate points by rolling dice. Haruka curses the old guy for giving him such a useless skill, and he rolls the dice. He rolls a double M, but Haruka has no clue what that means. He assumes the worst as he thinks that M stands for masochist. However, his stats screen just tells them to choose which stat he wants to add to. Haruka doesn't think that raw stats will help him survive with his terrible abilities, so he chooses to put the points into luck. His strategy is to completely ignore a balanced build, and instead he will just max out luck. Just then, Haruka realizes that the M stood for max because his luck stat is now maxed out. Haruka surprised when he notices that he has 2 extra skills and C of useless abilities. He assumes that it's because he was summoned alone. Haruki's loner title means that he's the loner with no friends and he cannot form a party. His servitude skill allows him to command others, and it was given to him because of his loner status. That's pretty cool, but it also means that Haruka has to say goodbye to his dreams of having a harem. Haruka wonders where all his classmates are, but it doesn't matter because he can't party with them anyway. Haruka decides to just begin his journey, and he wants to start by securing a base of operation. It's pretty hard to see through the forest, so Haruka is worried about a monster showing up. He wonders if he has a skill that could be useful, but the only one that comes to mind is the skill that allows him to doze off. Haruka tries on the contact lenses he has in his bag and finds that it's actually super useful. It allows him to see a bunch of extra stuff, and he finds that it grants him the appraisal skill. This leads to Haruka finding an edible mushroom that draws out latent abilities. His bottomless bag lets him take as many as he wants, so he apologizes to it for thinking it was useless earlier. Haruka chugs down some water, but he hears something in the distance. This sound leads him to a cave, and he prays that he doesn't find a monster. Haruka's bag came with a bunch of camping stuff, so he decides to make this cave his base. He uses temperature magic to light some twigs on fire, and determines that the leftover skills are actually pretty useful. Haruka checks his stats again and finds that his temperature magic leveled up, which unlocks fire magic. Haruka worries about what he will do if a monster appears because he can only smack it with the sticker right now, but he just ends up falling asleep. The next day, Haruka wakes to find everything is okay. He has items that repel monsters and his shut-in title protects his living space. Haruka can now use fire magic to start fires, so he cooked himself some breakfast. He had some beef jerky in his bag and he had some of the mushrooms he found the day before. The food is delicious. Haruka is very grateful for his villager starter bag. It's more than just a villager bag though, so Haruka thinks it's more like a bag for a survivalist. Haruka heads out to find more food for later, but he knows that the main concern right now is how to protect himself from monsters. Just then Haruka finds the last thing he wanted to see: two goblins. They are small fry monsters, but their stats are higher than expected. Haruka wonders if he can even win, but he realizes that it doesn't matter because you will have to learn to deal with monsters one way or another. Unfortunately, Haruka doesn't think that his stick will do much. Haruka does have a skill called wrapping, which allows him to wrap all sorts of things with magic and grants various effects. This seems to make his stick stronger, so Haruka is determined to surpass everyone even without any cheat skills. Haruka begins his first attack ever and he brutally beats down on the first unsuspecting goblin. The second one tries to attack him, but its moves are pretty lame and Haruka easily dodges them. Haruka somehow knows how to use a new power, and he eliminates the second goblin. Afterwards, Haruka is pleased after winning his first battle, and he heads back to base. He brought back one of the clubs that the goblin used, but he determined that his stick is still better. Haruka is excited to find that he leveled up and all his stats more than doubled. His cane mastery leveled up as well, which is strange because he just swung his stick around a few times. Haruka got magic confusion as well, which probably came from him enchanting his stick with magic. His calisthenics went up as well because Haruka has never missed a morning exercise. Haruka is exaggerating quite a bit though, as he has only been in this new world for 2 days. Later, Haruka is tired of eating mushrooms already. He would rather eat meat, but he knows that he would be schooled by the class rep for being ungrateful. With his meal done, Haruka decides to try out and enhancing himself. This magic infusion enhances his physical and magical defenses. Haruka's appraisal skill has also reached level 2, but he wonders why it's showing a bunch of question marks on all his stuff. Haruka decides not to overthink things and he leaves. He celebrates as the force blesses him with something already, but he realizes that it's just another mushroom. Haruka searches for meat that might grow out of trees, but he remembers that he's supposed to be practicing his magic. Haruka finds that his enhanced body is much lighter, so much so that it feels like he is teleporting. That isn't all, as his dexterity is insane now too. Haruka finds a more powerful goblin, but he easily defeats it. He takes out another, so he is confident that he could defeat even a group of 3 of them now. Haruka actually runs into a group of 3 goblins, but he's a coward, and he decides that he has had enough fighting for the day. Haruka recaps his day, which consisted of his goblin battle and magic studying at night. On day 5, Haruka succeeded in defeating a goblin with the single strike, and he decorated his base with some fancy stuff he made with magic. Haruka is once again pretty pleased as his life in this new world is starting to come together. That night, Haruka chases a meaty rabbit as he's desperate to eat some meat. Just then Haruka detects her presence and he instantly determines that it's not a goblin. It turns out to be his classmates, but Haruka is disappointed to see that it's the delinquents. Haruka would rather not get involved with them, but he senses that another group is in the other direction. His clairvoyance still allows him to see who it is, but he's horrified to see that it's the popular girls. The jocks are also rapidly approaching. The nerds are nearby too, but after talking to them from time to time in his old world, Haruka would rather take a pass on seeing them. That just leaves the class rep and her friends. Haruka knows that it would be best if he had some friends in this harsh world, and he has known the class rep since grade school. Haruka decides to at least say hello, but he stops himself. He realizes that he feels really free and isolated right now. He can live the way he wants without anyone butting in, and he wouldn't exchange that for anything. Haruka makes his final decision, which is to conquer this new world all alone. He then ducks into a bush to keep himself hidden as the delinquents approach, and one of them could have sworn he heard someone in this direction, and he's closing in on the bushes Haruka is hiding in, but as he checks inside all he finds is the bunny, so he and the others continue walking. Haruka is relieved that they didn't find him, but he decides to follow them so he can figure out if they are planning something. He listens closely as the delinquents have a highly intellectual conversation about their class VP's chest, and Haruka is disappointed because he thought he would at least learn something useful from them. With no laws to stop them, Haruka is a little worried about what the delinquents might do to the girls, but he's sure the class rep will put a stop to whatever they are trying to do because she always does. However, Haruka soon overhears the delinquents talk about using a mirror called Tenica phrase ability so they can do whatever they want. The delinquents then get up to head back to camp and Haruka can tell that they are up to no good, but he can't bring himself to intervene because that would require social interaction and he's firmly against that. He heads back to his cave and starts grilling some mushrooms, but then he notices something that completely devastates him. His loner skill just leveled up, meaning even his status board recognizes him as a loner. This is probably because he chose to avoid his classmates, but still it's not the worst thing that could happen. If anything, he would like to level up more because his overall level is still only 3. The main reason for this is that he has 2 skills that he can't level is Jack of all trade and dummy skills. To be honest, he's not even sure what the skills do. Jack of all trades probably means he will be good at most things he tries, but he will never be able to become a master any particular craft, and that's pretty straightforward. But as for the dummy skill, the best explanation Haruka can come up with is something to do with puppets, but he's not sure about it. He decides to give up on trying to figure out for now and just eat his dinner, but he still really wishes he had some meat. Haruka calls it a day and goes to bed for the night, but as he's trying to get some sleep, he hears a huge ruckus outside and he can't just ignore it, so he gets up to figure out what's going on. As he left his cave, he was expecting to see the delinquents up to no good again, but to his surprise it was actually the nerds this time. They are currently fighting a bunch of goblins and it looks like they are having a bit of trouble, so Haruka considers helping them out, but he changes his mind once he sees their stats. They've got skills that are way better than his and they are all level 16 while Haruka is still level 3. He figures they'll be alright without him, so he turns to walk away, but just before he leaves he spots 2 goblins sneaking up behind the group and the nerds are already struggling as things are so if they get attacked from behind and they'll be wiped out sure. Haruka is still on the fence about whether he should help them or not, but then he remembers the time the nerds shared their holographic Charizard with him, and he then decides that they are worth saving. He runs out of the bushes with a stick in hand and he easily one-shot both goblins in one swing. He then turns to the nerds and asks them if they are alright, and the nerds fine, but they're shocked to see Haruka out here. Once they've gotten reacquainted, the nerds thank Haruka for his help, but he's having a hard time communicating with them since he hasn't spoken to real people for a long time now. He eventually takes them all back to his place and the nerds are all amazed by how nice the interior is considering as a cave. Haruka explains that he learned a little earth magic and crafting to help with the remodeling, but the nerds still think it's impressive that he did all this by himself. Haruka prepares a drink for them all and asks why they route in the middle of the woods so late at night. The nerds suddenly fall silent when the topic is brought up, and after a few seconds, they tell Haruka that they are actually on the run from the rest of the class right now. It all started after the class first got Ecchi here, and at first everyone was just surprised by everything that just happened, but they were soon faced with the reality that they are stuck here, and they started freaking out over it. A few of them were more calm about the situation, like the popular girls who seemed like they were more annoyed than scared, the jocks who were trying to figure out what to do but knew nothing about Ecchi, and the nerds who were totally within their element. The class rep was just as confused as everyone else, but she has the common sense to realize that crying in an unknown force is a good way to attract unwanted predators and get them all killed, so she tries to get everyone to quiet down. However, it was too late as a group of goblins had already found the class and the class rep has no idea how to handle these monsters, so she starts freaking out. Everyone else is freaking out as well, even the delinquents of the nerds know someone has to handle this, so they all activate their skills so they can take down the goblins. The gym bros join in to help and soon enough all the goblins have been defeated, but it still isn't safe to be out here. So the class rep gets everyone's attention and says they should all find somewhere safe to stay before they get attacked again. A little while later, the class settled on setting up camp by the river, and the nerds took it upon themselves to teach everyone how to survive in this world with all the Ecchi knowledge they possessed. The duties were evenly divided among all the members of the class and everything seemed like it was going well until the popular girls suddenly said, "Nah, we don't want to do any work." The class rep tried to convince them that the work was necessary and all they had to do was help set up the tents, but the girls just didn't want to bother with it, and since the popular girls weren't doing anything, the delinquents decided that they would be lazy as well, leaving the class rep and the nerds to do all the work instead. On top of that, the nerds went out of their way to handle all the monsters that would try to attack the camp, and while it seemed like a lot of work, they had to do this for their own sake. Back in the White Room, the nerds saw 2 particularly disturbing skills get chosen. One was the charm spell that grants control over people, and another troubling one was the puppeteer skill, which pretty much does the same thing. They knew that one of the delinquents possessed the puppeteer skill, so the nerds wanted to level up quickly in order to be able to defend themselves against the delinquents. However, at night the delinquents would go out and slay monsters as well, but only for the sake of leveling up so they can use their skills, and while the nerds eavesdropping on them, they began talking about how they will turn the girls into their slaves once they have enough levels to use their skills. The nerds realized that this would mean a lot of trouble, so they went to warn the class rep about it. However, just a few days later, the delinquents have leveled up enough to use their skills, and the class rep just so happened to be nearby, so they planned to make her their first victim. However, they ended up getting jumped by the nerds, and once they were down, their skills were sealed away so they wouldn't be able to cause any harm. Now the delinquents are basically powerless, and as you would expect, the girls didn't take it well when they found out about the plan the delinquents had made, so the delinquents were kicked out of the camp. That would have been the end of it, but the delinquents petty, so later that night, while the nerds were around and beat them up, the delinquents attacked the camp just to mess with everyone and ended up burning everything to the ground. Once there was nothing left, the delinquents retreated back into the forest, and by the time the nerds returned to camp, they were devastated to discover that all their hard work had been destroyed. The popular girls somehow blamed them for all the destruction and were giving them a really hard time for antagonizing the delinquents. The class rep stood up for them and reminded everyone that the nerds are the only reason they've been surviving out here so far, and the nerds appreciated the class rep having their backs, but they couldn't spend another minute and a camel full of such ungrateful people, which is why they all went on the run. After hearing the whole story, Haruka feels really bad for them, so he decides to host a feast of mushrooms for them that night. He actually enjoyed spending time with other people for once, but by the next day, the nerds had to leave because they plan on heading downstream to find a village and start their lives as adventurers. They offered to let Haruka join them because they consider him a friend, and while Haruka thinks of them as friends as well, he still has to decline their offer because he believes his trash skills would only hold the nerds back. With that said, he's also a bit worried about the situation of the class camp, mostly because the class rep is still there and she's the only other person in the class that he likes, so he decides to go check it out. Along the way, he randomly runs into a cobalt and the thing bites him a lot, but ultimately, he manages to kill it and continue his journey. By nighttime, he arrived at the riverside where the class camp should have been, but surprisingly the place is totally deserted. He assumes they must have moved somewhere else, so he uses one of his detection skills to pick up some footprints and follows them until he eventually comes across the popular girls. Of everyone in the class, Haruka hates dealing with them the most. She tries to turn around and head home, but the girls have already started chasing him. Haruka would have no trouble outrunning them, but he stopped dead in his tracks when he hears them say the word please. In all the years Haruka has known them, please has never been in their vocabulary, so something serious must have happened for them to be this desperate. He decides to talk to them after all, and the first thing that girls do is ask him if he knows where the nerds went. Haruka is hesitant to tell them because he thinks they just want to yell at the nerds some more, but on the contrary, the girls actually want to apologize to them. They now realize how much the nerds were doing for them, and they sincerely want to make amends for the way they treated them. But by now the nerds are alone gone, so there's no way the girls would ever catch up to them. To begin with, they can't make it out of the woods by themselves, and they can't defend themselves from monsters, so how do they intend to find the nerds? He asked them if they have the resolve to do whatever it takes to go apologize to the nerds, but the girls break down crying because they know that they'll die in no time if they are left out in the woods by themselves. They plead with Haruka to teach them how to survive out here. He is so stunned by their sudden request that he ends up agreeing to it without thinking. As a result, Haruka's subjugate ability activates, and all of a sudden the girls have become his subservient followers. Now all they do is blankly stare at him and finish off monsters whenever Haruka gets into a fight, and then they pull out the magic crystal and present it to him like puppies looking for praise. Haruka really isn't happy with how things are going, but for now he notices that one of the girls has a small injury on her arm, so he hands her a healing potion he made so she can recover. However, she just uses it on him instead. He's getting really sick of how the girls only do things for his benefit now, and he is really worried about how he's going to explain this to the class rep if he runs into her, and right on cue, the class rep just so happened to be walking through that part of the woods at the moment. Haruka is startled by the class rep screaming, but she reminds them that they have been friends since grade school. The other girls are with her, but the class rep is more concerned about what happened to the popular girls. Haruka doesn't know how to explain how they came under his control because he doesn't really understand how it happened either. Haruka comes clean and tells her that they have become his servants, but this makes the class rep furious. She points out that the domination skill is only for use on monsters, so Haruka tells her that it was just a mistake. None of the girls believe him, so Haruka decides that it's time for him to go, but the girls stop him. Our protagonist Haruka is just a loner, and he wishes that he could just go home alone. The class rep snaps Shimazaki out off Haruka's spell, and she decides to get answers from her. Haruka doesn't mind as he tries to escape, but the class rep tells him not to leave. As the girls discuss what happened, Haruka decides to practice expanding his home base. More specifically, how to make a basement. His training starts off well enough, but soon he finds that he has buried himself. The class rep helps them up and she explains that Shimazaki told her everything. She realizes that Haruka was just trying to help the girls, but Haruka doesn't even remember saying anything like that. All the girls thank him for being so kind, but Haruka just wants to go home. The girls pressure him to help them, and the class rep wonders what Haruka means by home. Haruka explains that he has a home in this new world, so the clueless class rep is shocked when she thinks that he was born here. Haruka reveals that he actually built his home, but she can't believe it because that's quite defeat. The girls have another meeting to discuss what they will do, and they wonder how many people can fit in Haruka's home. Haruka calculates that he can fit at least 240 people and maybe more if he takes out his luxurious furniture. The girls really get excited when they hear that Haruka has baths, and they wonder how he can be living in luxury when everyone else is suffering. The girls decide to ask him if they can stay with him for a day, and Haruka is shocked that high school girls want to stay overnight at his place. Haruka can't believe that they're being so scandalous, but the class rep points out that he's the only perv there. Haruka leads the girls to his house, and they are amazed to see that he even has a path that leads to it. It's so impressive that the class rep wonders if he even has a convenience store, but Haruka explains that he was going to make a pharmacy first. The girls arrive at his home exhausted, and Haruka welcomes them. Haruka has made a ton of upgrades to his home, and the girls can't believe how luxurious it is. Haruka, of course, directs them towards the kitchen, but the girls are more interested in the restroom. Our protagonist is shocked when they all disrobe and hop right into the bath, so he thinks that living too long in the forest has turned the girls into savages. Haruka is actually quite happy to finally be alone, but he knows the only loners could understand this happiness. The class rep arrives to thank him because the other guys left all the girls alone and they were worried. Being around Haruka has calmed them down, and so has all the amenities in his home. The class rep is upset because she couldn't do much for the group, but Haruka points out that she has done plenty. She didn't do as much as the nerds, but Haruka explains that those guys never went outside in the old world and they spent their entire lives preparing for this moment by playing World of Warcraft. The class rep feels much better, so she thanks Haruka, but she realizes something. After coming to this world, Haruka has a home food and he can even defeat monsters, so that makes him even weirder than their nerds. The class rep goes to sleep with the other girls, but Haruka doesn't think that he will be getting any rest tonight. The next morning, Haruka's woken up by a girl who tells him that breakfast is ready, but he just wants to sleep for a while longer. She asks Haruka to get up for her, but he doesn't think that's something she should be saying in this position. Haruka's stunned to learn that she has made fish for breakfast, and he almost knocks her unconscious. Haruka takes one bite out of the delicious fish and he cries because it's been so long since he has had anything so good. The class rep can't believe that he's getting so emotional from eating fish because he lives right next to a river, but Haruka explains that he hasn't been able to catch any fish himself. They are too fast and slippery, so he has just been watching all the fish while eating mushrooms by the river. One girl shows them how she uses lightning magic to stun a bunch of fish in the water all at once, and Haruka asks her to show him again. The girl prepares the attack again, but this time Haruka wraps the lightning magic with his packing skill. This allows Haruka to move the magic, and he uses it to stun and capture some fish. Haruka celebrates as he has also learned the lightning magic skill. He isn't really sure about how he was able to do it, but he explains to the girls that by using his packing skill on magic, he can get whatever elemental magic it is. This seems pretty overpowered to the class rep, so Haruka determines that even the worst skills have some use. It's pretty incredible to the class rep, but Haruka reveals that he just got stuck with all the worst leftover skills. The girls are planning to find a nearby town, but they want to level up first. Haruka agrees that they need to earn some levels if they want to continue hunting the nerds, but the gossip girls point out that they just want to thank them. Haruka agrees to help the girls level up, so he has them all tell him what level they are. He is shocked, however, when the girls are all over level 16 while he's still just level 7. Haruka tells the girls that their training will start with fighting some kobolds that just happen to appear. It's a group of easy level 3 monsters, so the girls are confident that they can take them out. Unfortunately, the girls are the ones that just end up getting knocked out. Afterwards, Haruka is happy that his Magic 10 is able to expand, but the girls have taken advantage of this by gathering there to have a review of their battle. The girls leave, but the purple-headed girl from earlier stays behind. She apologizes for her behavior in the morning and reveals that she was just testing Haruka. The other boys tried attacking her before, so she wanted to see if Haruka was the same as them. Haruka is totally different from them, though, as he gave the girls a place to stay, food to eat, and even taught them how to fight. She plans to wake him up for breakfast the next morning as well, and Haruka says goodbye to the fish girl. The next morning Haruka enjoys his breakfast and he overhears some of the girls planning to fight the kobolds again. The class rep arrives to tell them that they aren't ready and they need more training. After training against some goblins, the girls feel like they are ready for their rematch. Haruka is worried about them, and his worry is proven correct as some of the girls are already out and sleeping. Some of them are even faking like they are sick, so he determines that the classroom's training isn't very good. Just and hope is restored as a few of the girls team up to defeat the kobold. The girls celebrate and tell the kobolds that they won't be losing to them anymore. Haruka is more relieved than ever because this means that he will be able to go back to his loner life. Just then he is shocked when the class rep is happy because they can all go together with Haruka to the town. Moments later the girls prepare for their journey and Haruka has the purple-haired girl fill her bag as much as possible. The class rep says that they are going overboard, so Haruka decides that he will just have to leave purple hair behind. The girls begin their journey, but Haruka tells the class rep that there's no telling what might happen. He is optimistic and declares that they just need to keep their wits about them. Elsewhere in the forest, another student runs for his life. Eventually he trips over the tiniest pebble ever, and he is found by the person he was running from. He says that he doesn't have the skills that the person is looking for, and he begs for his life. The mysterious person doesn't listen to his pleas, and justice strangles him until he is no longer alive. Back in the forest, Haruka continues his journey out of the woods to escort the girls to the nearest civilization. But on their way they encounter a massive level 11 orc. Haruka tells the girls to stand back and watch how he fights so they can learn as well. With that he charges forward with his tiny baby stick while the orc swings its massive club down to smash him. But its surprise, Haruka suddenly vanishes from right in front of him. In reality Haruka is hiding behind a tree and laughing at how slow the work is. He remembers the nerds telling him that orcs have high resistance to physical attacks and can only be defeated by using magic. Haruka scrolls through his status screen to find good magic to use against the monster, and he notices that he has something called the Grand Magic. Haruka notes that he learned the wind, water, and earth elements by using the packing magic in various ways like vacuum cleaning and pulling the ground, and he becomes happy at how smart he is. Just then Orc breaks the tree he's hiding behind and starts attacking him. Haruka jumps back and tries to dodge everything and then gets behind the orc and strikes it with this tiny baby stick. However, to everyone's surprise, the orc takes a lot of damage and ends up hugging the ground with its last breath. Haruka thinks about how orcs are supposed to have high physical defense, and the girls look at him with the suspicious face as well. Haruka says that he will take the next one down using magic, just like how the nerds hold on to. The next time they come across an orc, Haruka creates a fireball in his hand and gently throws it at the monster's head. This makes it explode on the spot, and Haruka one-shot to another monster. Haruka wonders what's happening, and the girls complain because there's no way they can learn anything when he keeps one-shooting monsters. Later that night, they all camp outside and enjoy some roasted mushrooms, while Haruka creates a trap using earth magic for everyone's safety. He thinks about how his tent has monster repellent and is equipped the presence detection magic as well, so the girl should be safe for the night. He starts planning their route for the next day, so he uses his map skill, which evolved from his appraisal and contact lens skills. He looks at it and thinks that they should follow along the river, but then he suddenly detects someone's presence. He notices that there are some humans walking towards them, and he worries that they might be the delinquents. However, to his relief, it turned out to just be the dumb jocks. Meanwhile, the class rep notices Haruka talking to them and decides to eavesdrop on them. Haruka asks the jocks what they're doing there and wonders if they were stalkers trying to check up on the girls while they were sleeping. He asked them if they're also creeps while being muscleheads, but they cry out and say that they are not. One of them says that they're not there for the girls, they're there for him. Haruka teases them by asking if they're like going to ditty parties, but they say they don't swing that way. After that, Haruka asks them why they were hiding from the girls, and they replied that it's because they can't trust anyone anymore. They explain that there's a skill that's much more dangerous than the puppetry and mesmerized skill. Haruka thinks that they must be talking about the hijack skill, which allows the user to steal other skills and abilities. The jocks say that the delinquents didn't say anything about the hijack skill, so that must mean they don't have it. However, that means that someone else has it, so they must be cautious of everyone. After hearing this, Haruka says that they must be stupid because they didn't consider the possibility that he might have that skill. However, they start smiling and say that if that were the case, then they would be really happy because they know that he's not a bad guy. They then asked him if he actually has it or not, and Haruka tells him that he doesn't have hijack, but he has the domination skill, which sounds even worse. They tell him that as long as he has all the weird skills, they won't have to worry because he will most likely just sit alone somewhere without harming anyone. After that, they say that they will keep an eye out for the delinquents in the forest, and they were just looking to warn Haruka about the hijack skill so he can stay safe. They then ask him to apologize to the girls on their behalf for not standing up to the delinquents earlier, and they walk away. Haruka sees them off by telling them to consult with the goblins if they're in trouble next time because they're both idiots, so they will get along well for sure. The next morning, Haruka tells everyone to prepare their equipment, and then they walk to the forest to look for some herbs before they leave. The class rep tells them that she knows about his talk with the jocks last night, and she apologizes to him. Haruka realizes that it's about the hijack skill, and he says that he knows that she is the one who has it. The class rep says that she asks the nerds to keep it a secret, but Haruka says that it was pretty obvious, but the jocks are too dumb to realize that. He tells her not to worry about it because they all trust her with that skill. That's why the nerds didn't steal it from her like they did with the delinquents. This makes the classroom really happy, and she starts tearing up. Haruka points out that she's been crying a lot since coming to this world, but the class rep says that it's because of him. Haruka freaks out and says that it's a false accusation and runs away. However, when he leaves, the class rep tells herself that it's because he makes her so happy. After that, they continue their journey, and Haruka decides to sell some fresh fruit juice on the way to cheer everyone up. One girl says that she doesn't have any money but would be interested in paying another way. However, the class rep scolds Haruka for being a pervert, and he stopped selling the juices, which makes the other girls weep about not getting any. They continue walking through the forest until Haruka spots the river. He tells the class rep that it should be safe to camp out here for the night and says that he will go on ahead to do some scouting as he dashes away. While running, he enhances his physical strength and uses weight magic to make himself lighter. He gets a good view of the forest from above, but then he realizes that he doesn't have a way to land safely, so he falls to the ground with his ass at 1 HP. Haruka then goes back to the camp and gets scolded by the class rep for being reckless. Haruka is a clever guy, so he tried to make up for it by saying that he picked up some fresh fruits to make more juice. The next day, they get back to trading their way out of the forest and encounter a bunch of new things on their way. They find a lost girl from their group and enjoy some time playing in the river, and even get chased by a horde of orcs. However, in the end, they manage to get out of the forest, and it makes everyone really excited. Haruka notes that his vision is covered by the hills in the area, and he notices a new airwalk skill and his status screen. He uses it to fly up to get a better view of their surroundings and notices a party of NPCs from this world getting attacked by a pack of monsters. He gets down and tells the class up everything. Being the good leader that she is, she freaks out and says that they should help them. However, Haruka warns that there's no guarantee that the NPCs are actually good people. There is no way to know if they will hurt them once they save them from the monsters. He suggests they continue walking forward, but the class rep says that she will fight back if they try to hurt her classmates. She really wants to save them, so she looks at Haruka with shaky eyes. Because of this, Haruka says that he will go there on his own. They're too far away, and the others won't be able to make it even if they run at full speed. Haruka then uses physical enhancement and weight magic again, and then he casts wind magic to hit himself into the air. He then continues flying towards the NPCs using his airwalk skill. However, he notices the class rep hanging from his cloak, and he asked her what she's doing. She says that she got caught up in the wind magic and tells him to look in front of him as they're about to crash. Unfortunately, Haruka says that he doesn't know how to apply brakes. They both crash down on the monsters near the NPC party and end up saving them in the process. Haruka gets up, and the NPC's leader introduces himself as Ofter alongside his partner Gatek. They thank him for saving their butts and explain that merchants were being attacked by monsters on this route. Because of that, they decided to pick up the quest from the Adventurers Guild, hoping that they would be able to make some money. However, if the fight had continued, they wouldn't be alive right now. After that, they pack their stuff and Haruka waits for the other girls to catch up to them. While waiting, he cooks up some of his bush mushrooms and shares them with the NPCs. They thank him for it and revealed that the mushrooms are actually quite valuable. The mushrooms restore their strength and Haruka becomes jealous of the old dudes in the party for getting the chance to go on adventures with such hotties. Just then, the class rep comes back to her senses and stops Haruka from turning into a villain. The other girls eventually catch up and they become really excited to see real-life elves. The NPC show them the way to a town called Omui, and the girls start running towards it excitedly like some kindergartners. On the other hand, we see the delinquents grinding up some levels in the forest. They say that it's about time they take revenge from the girls and have their way with them. However, the nerd that they kidnapped suggests that they first get their puppetry and mesmerize skills unsealed. The delinquents all agree and they decide to hunt a nerds group first. At the same time, the jocks look at them from behind some trees and become worried about them making their move. And with that, we have come to the end of this part. Stay tuned for next part. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to receive all the latest updates.